Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am your host, as always, Jack Chambers Ward, and I'm joined by an all-star cast for this very special episode. Of course, this podcast is all about me having conversations with the best and brightest minds across SEO and search marketing, and I've got 4 of them this week, which I think is a record for the most ever in one episode. I'm talking with Jono Alderson, Jono Alderson, Myriam Jessier, and Chris Green, all joining me on a panel to talk about the future of search, Google's announcements from Google I/O, AI mode, the conversational nature and evolution of the way that we search, transparency of data, our social contract with Google and other publishers. We go all over the place in a very, very good way, and I feel like I've learned so much and my brain is full of ideas and thoughts and questions after this conversation. So without any further ado, please do go and like and subscribe. Give us a comment on Spotify, give us a review on Spotify, all that good stuff. Help promote the show and share this around on social media, and enjoy my conversation with Dawn, Jono, Myriam, and Chris.
Do we expect any transparency from Google then? Do you all expect proper data? Because I don't.
The story they're going to tell us is going to deviate further and further from what's actually going on. This is the dawn of a golden age, and I think the social contract was a comfort blanket that we invented as an industry that Google never gave us or agreed to or acknowledged.
The reason why ChatGPT and so forth are so massively popular with Gen Z and Millennials is because they reduce the information overload, the search costs. The SEO world finds a lemon, wants to squeeze it forever.
All of this assumes that the web as we have it is perfect and far better, which is demonstrably false, right? We collectively have filled it with rubbish, and it is not good, and it is full of low quality, largely duplicate, largely undifferentiated keyword filler.
I think judging the true quality of a piece of content is not one of our finest strengths.
Your brand is a disco ball, different facets, and you don't control all of them because you exist within a social fabric.
I think there's some people that have very polarized views on AI. I think for them it might. For everyone else, particularly if you're under 30, I don't think it will. I frankly think it will change. I think it's so pervasive and so powerful. And fundamentally, it has the potential to be better, and I think will be.
My first guest is an award-winning independent SEO consultant with more than 15 years of experience in SEO and digital marketing. He has spoken at some of the most prestigious SEO conferences around the world, is a multiple-time SEO world champion, and somehow has never been on Search with Candour before. I checked with Mark earlier, and this blew my mind. Welcome, Jono Alderson.
Thank you very much for having me. What a treat. What a lovely intro.
My next guest is a principal consultant and managing director at Bertie. She has worked in SEO for over 20 years and has also spoken at SEO conferences around the world. She's making her return to Search with Candour for the first time in 5 years. It was June of 2020, everybody. Welcome back, Dawn Alderson.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for the kind invitation. I'm looking forward to chatting.
You're very welcome. Looking forward to chatting with everybody. Next up, usually they only make an appearance on All Hallows Eve on this podcast, but they're making a special exception for this all-star AI mode discussion. They've also worked in digital marketing for over 20 years and spoken at marketing conferences around the world. They are the co-founder of Neurospicy and the lead trainer at Pragam. Welcome back, Myriam Jessier.
Bonjour, bonjour.
I think, in fact, you might be a record-setting 4th appearance on the show, I think.
What?
Yeah, no, it's not the value that I bring, Chris. It's just that I'm a Halloween Scream Queen duo person. I only come out with skeletons.
And my final guest has worked in SEO for over 15 years, has also spoken at SEO marketing conferences around the world. He is the technical director at Talk Partnership, and today is his bloody birthday. Happy birthday and welcome back, Chris Green.
Hello. What a thing to be doing on your birthday. That's all I'll say.
I know. Thank you, mate. I didn't realize, and then I flicked over to your LinkedIn page this morning. It's like, uh-oh. Oh, no. Does Chris realize he's spending all of his birthday morning with us?
I do. If I could have it time again, I'd still do the same, Jack. You know that.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks, mate. That means a lot. So yes, I have assembled this all-star panel. Well, between Mark Williams Cook and we assembled an all-star panel of SEO people to talk about all the mad stuff that's going on with Google and AI mode and tracking things and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of kicked off a lot with a lot of the announcements from Google I/O last week, and a big announcement that what is going to happen to all of our traffic? Because, of course, we've been talking about this so much with AI overviews. We've been talking about so much about how much the SERPs are going to change in the coming months and coming years. AI mode has now officially launched in the US and probably going to be not far behind in the rest of the world and the UK, since that's kind of how AI overviews worked. So I guess I kind of want to start things off with the big topic, and we'll kind of get into bits and details throughout. And I think it's kind of the social contract, for want of a better phrase, between us as users and us as SEOs and Google as a company. Because I think a lot of us might have differing opinions, we might have different kind of relationships with this kind of thing. Jono, I'll come to you first. How are you feeling about the level of data transparency we have currently and where you think it's going in the future?
I think this is great. This is the dawn of a golden age, and I think the social blanket, the social contract was a comfort blanket that we invented as an industry that Google never gave us or agreed to or acknowledged. That was designed to allow us to operate comfortably in a very myopic, very mechanical way, where we worked on the premise that everybody could and deserved to rank, and that we would build business models based on clicks from a format that no longer exists and arguably is no longer relevant, and arguably further was always a dysfunction and was always friction. And I think this is a transformative time and age, and Google is, as they always do, messing up all of the comms and messing up all of the product launches, and it turns out are deeply corrupt and conflicted in many ways. But I think the aggregate direction of travel is great. I think roll on an age of zero-click, frictionless experiences where our job isn't to pump out articles and buy links, but is to truly help brands to differentiate and be meaningfully valuable. I think that's more exciting than SEO has ever been.
I have opinions.
That's why you're here, Myriam.
Dawn, go first. I saw your face.
Sorry. I am totally with you on some things, Jono, as I often am. I do believe that even though Google have never officially had a social contract with anybody, I believe that as a field, the field of information retrieval, there is an unspoken contract that the web is open and that it's an information ecosystem which needs to be protected and cherished and nurtured by everybody, whether you're an IR researcher, whether you're work at a search engine, whether you're an SEO. We're all kind of in this together to help people find the information and organize it in the world. You know, to some extent, we all have the same objectives. I believe that when I look at what's happening in the IR space in particular, they are fairly aghast at the way that Google has bulldozed, if you like, the dawn of generative information retrieval and is kind of forcing everybody else that has been used to this 70-year paradigm is of the web, even back to the post-war times of organizing like stocks that came back from the war. You know, they're basically like, there's a really interesting paper called Situating Search by Myriam Bender and Shah, Emily Bender, sorry, and Shah. I'm thinking Myriam there. And literally that puts it totally back against what Google's doing and says, you know, hold on, first and foremost, AI overviews, generative information retrieval, it doesn't meet the 16 modes of information seeking users that come from the days of, you know, Nick Belkin in the IR field. So there's loads of things as well. Google's arguments are that there's this notion now of Delphic cost that Andre Broad has come out with, and basically saying, look, the reason why ChatGPT and so forth are so massively popular with Gen Z and Millennials is because they reduce the, if you like, almost the information overload, the search costs. Yeah. So we need to get on board with that. Plus, obviously, they've got all this commercial pressure. And I think the commercial pressure is the thing that, you know, if we just look at it in reality, they're just chasing. And there was a really interesting article on Wired that was an interview that was basically saying, look, you know, we've lowered the guardrails. AI overviews is so riddled with mistakes still. I'm really concerned about the fact that young people are using these tools to make life choices, for instance. Sam Altman 2 weeks ago was bragging about how Gen Z and Millennials are using these suites as life advisors. Well, if Google's going to do the same, there's something interesting happening at the moment where, for instance, AI overviews can't even tell what year it is. So that is a worry. I think it's all quite worrying, really.
I think that touches on if my kids had friends like ChatGPT and Google, I'd tell them not to hang around. Like, I think that's their kind of like, if they were people and based on the advice and the mistakes, and I would be like, please don't. That part is sort of super worrying. I think I'm somewhere between Dawn and Jono on this. Like, I think what they're doing right now and the missteps they're making are purely commercially driven, and these are forced errors. But I also agree that the direction we're going and that reduction of that friction, and fundamentally, if it works well, it's such a better experience. Like the way that we've all been in this industry for far too long, and the way that we were trained to use search engines is bad. Like it's such a, like, crafting these like stunted keywords like queries to find searches in the way that we refine queries, and all of that is kind of crap, and watching it disappear is good in that sense. I just think this period of transition we are right now is really relatively painful for the industry because of how it's being handled, and I think we'll probably come on to some of the specifics around that, but I'm overall optimistic. I do think that SEOs are the perfect people to navigate this, and I think we're doing SEO today, and frankly we will be tomorrow, if your definition of SEO is changeable. I think if you're clinging on to yesterday's definition, then of course SEOs will suffer. But we've been saying that for 10 years. I remember the last 2 or 3 paradigm shifts. If your definition of what we actually do as a job doesn't change, then yeah, you're going to get left behind. So I'm kind of in the messy middle. I also definitely interrupted Myriam there, which is unlike me.
You would not expect this to happen out in the wild. Usually it's the opposite. Concretely, I'm somewhere else. I mean, I agree with some things, I disagree with some things, but let's get back to what a social contract is. It is either stated or it is understood kind of implicitly, hypothetically, this is how it's going to work. And if we had no social contract with Google, then hypothetically, they wouldn't have a search liaison team that desperately tries to claw back some stuff. And there used to be a time where it was rather adversarial, and basically it was taken for granted that marketers were going to become specialized in SEO because there's money to be made, and let them figure it out. But now it's more of a, we're going to convince you that these things are changing and that it's somehow good. You're going to keep being good stewards to us. You're going to keep doing the nasty work that we don't want to figure out in the field, because here we are building our little thing, right? No, we're part of an ecosystem. If I'm not making a living out of doing this, guess what? I'm going to figure out how to make a living. And if that involves way more AI slop and way more gaming the system, haven't we been through that already, being black hats? Okay, because I didn't have a choice when I got started in the industry. That was pretty much it in Paris. Okay, I'm French SEO is an unusual landscape, as any LLM would say, in the challenging landscape or dynamic landscape of French SEO. So realistically speaking, I think there's a social contract, and I think that it's always a pendulum of whether, quote unquote, Google the company, not the search liaison team, but Google the company is like, should we care about this? Yes, no. And right now it feels very much like we're trying to make it up as we go, and we're hoping you go along and help us figure it out. But we know that there's money that's flowing out of your pockets somewhere else, and you should be okay with it because AI overviews are great. Okay, but then that leads to, okay, great. Can I validate this from an outside perspective? Can I give feedback? Because you're somewhere else, and that somewhere else worries me, because LLMs are great at detaching themselves from reality. AI answers are completely detached sometimes, as Dawn said it, like, what day are we? Doesn't matter. Is glue, a topping for a pizza? Sure, could happen. So it really feels like we're not anchored anymore. Let's find that anchor again somewhere new, but let's find an anchor.
They're 100% going to have to come to a middle ground with us. I think, sure, they have the search relations team, but that is a tiny group of people in a huge corporation that actually is running ahead in a whole industry, a whole field, a whole scientific field. So they, I think, are going to they're going to have to realize that they can't just run ahead and not take everybody else with them. Some point they will have to come back when they realize that publishers are not bothering to, not forget the SEOs, publishers are not bothering to create great content anymore because there has to be a value in it, an economic value, a commercial value, not just for search engines, but for publishers. So when they get to the point where actually content quality declines to the point where eventually they're just retraining on AI generated stuff, and that will lead to catastrophic forgetting because that's what happens. It's a downward spiral. Then they'll have to come back to reality and meet us in the middle. So I agree, even though I sound like I've been negative. I've not. I'm very positive about the future because I think it will work itself out. But at the minute, we're kind of in different directions and we're going to all have to come back to the middle ground. Everybody's trying to work things out. I mean, you only have to look at LinkedIn to all the SEO that's going on, isn't it? And to make sense, we're all guessing. We're all just trying to find our way through. Maybe they are as well.
I don't think we are guessing. I think we're waiting for Google to solve this first. We're demanding that they reinforce and define this social contract and that they provide us with business models and ways of making revenue that are still based on clicks and traffic. And the publishing industry are holier than thou, arrogant beyond belief, and demand that the current status quo be maintained. And I think actually it's on us to say the landscape and the entire ecosystem is changing. Maybe our business models are no longer right, and maybe we should. It's a super complicated question. How do we make money from publishing original high-value content? But Google aren't going to answer that for us. And the search liaison team certainly isn't. Like, they are, at best, they're a honeypot, a kind of catch-all email address to deflect questions that otherwise would get louder and louder until answered. Right? They're not actively holding our hands and shepherding us. This is on us to solve and on business to solve. We need to create new business models that thrive in this new ecosystem.
And that's why I said, hey, if you let us to our own devices, that's fine. We're going to have a field day. Like this thing, imagine literally us tying AIO with a rope to the back of our truck and going, this is what's going to happen.
I mean, does anyone think that... I was about to say, just the worrying thing, I know we talk about SEO and some people are trying to guess and be at the front and others are sitting back and kind of waiting for the dust to settle a little. The worrying thing that I'm seeing is a lot of what's coming out is sounding frighteningly like yesterday's tactics, just at a grander scale. So it's like query fan out, great, really useful thing to find out. Is our strategy now that we write content for every piece of query fan out to try and be visible all over that query? It's like, that feels like I mean, I get the principle of it, but in actuality and how SEO tends to operate is it kind of feels like we're just going to be spitting out a crap load more content to feature in this space without actually understanding, well, what is actually the customer and the user journey? I don't think all of those answers are being currently held in vector space that Google has that we can use. I think, Jono, for your halcyon days that you're saying is the opportunity, I don't feel like the industry is moving in that direction already. I know we're still super early days, but it feels like it's just going to make itself worse.
We move back, right? Like, a lot of this content never gets seen by humans. It's designed explicitly to feed the bots, which is interesting. I don't know if that's necessarily bad. Like, maybe my website is now significantly more inventory for bots and systems to understand and comprehend my service offerings and products than it is a marketing pamphlet to convince pliable plastic humans. Maybe that's different and it's scary. I don't know if it's bad.
So we've been writing content for humans, right? Everything, don't write for bots, write for humans all this time. And it's kind of like, well, now you're getting robots to write for other robots at this point, right? It's just Ouroboros, that kind of thing.
Right.
No, I disagree. I disagree on that. I think that even though it will perhaps be agents that go off and search the web on behalf of the human, it still has the human's information needs in mind. And ultimately, it's there to to assist the human. So I think we still write for humans. We still should create information that's for humans. The query fan out thing, well, to me, it literally is just augmentation of queries, because traditionally, one of the major issues for search is that data is sparse, queries are sparse, and so forth. So it's just augmentation. Effectively, it's synonyms and relatedness all bucketed together. It doesn't feel like rocket science to me at all. I know that people make a lot of these things. Something that is quite interesting is something that's I'm seeing a lot in the literature, which is called the differentiable search index, which is effectively just tearing up the rule book, the playbook on index, retrieve, rank, and all these separate algorithms that just go join together and making it into just one model. That seems to be the massive direction of travel. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think we still write for humans. Simple as that.
What I'm pondering lately, and it's something that Chris said in the beginning, is search seems to be aligning better to more natural ways in which humans will seek out information. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's a brand new dawn. I'm just saying, hey, some of those ways of searching feel more natural to some of us. We see those behaviors changing. And if you add this, these new pathways to interact with a service, a product, a brand, a thing, an entity, okay? On the flip side of that, you have brands that will desperately want to control this or, build usages they approve of. But if you're a company and you actually do spend the time to build an impeccable brand, and then for whatever reason, there's a semantic drift and the output that comes out is, oh yeah, that brand, that's the Temu of that industry. That will create issues as well. So there's a question of trust here, where it's like, okay, if I put this content out there for humans, but also mindful of, these new ways of searching, how do you repay me for this? Is the fidelity there? Do you represent me in, at the very least, a legally acceptable way?
Yeah, the legal side of things I think is really interesting. It's something I saw Barry Adams mention on in an article the other day, where if Google is taking all of the publisher stuff, he uses publishing as an example, and essentially hosting it on the SERPs, right? Does that not turn Google essentially into a publisher of their own? And then where does that legally stand in terms of, well, you have like journalistic integrity and legality and all that kind of stuff that publishers are beholden to. So do we then need to hold the SERPs to a journalistic integrity and a publishing integrity? And can you start getting like slander and libel and all that kind of stuff from the SERPs? Do we start suing Google in 6 months' time?
Everyone's doing it.
I was going to say, kind of feels like they seem to just think having a disclaimer on things just gets them out of trouble for everything. It's like
it's an experimental feature. Don't worry about it.
It's like experimental. This can be wrong, so kind of live with it. Check
kind of like Uber. I'm sorry, but kind of like Uber. If you get in the car, that's not us. If you have an issue with a driver, too bad.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, at some point, it really feels like, I'm very French, so please girdle your loins and everything else. But there's a philosopher called Baudrillard who's explaining, like, he has this theory of a simulacra and a simulation. And it's basically saying that the world is becoming more and more of a copy of a copy of a copy. And the first level of this is that, we can tell there's something fake going on, that it's not the accurate reflection of reality, or like ceci n'est pas une pipe. Just because it's a painting, it's not the object. But then you move down one more level, like the image, the copy, is going to pervert the basic reality. And then there's even 2 more levels, so we're going to stop at the third one. The image will mask the absence of a basic reality. And when we end up with a situation where it's like, trust me, bro, trust me to make the right choice for the right brand, I get a bit uncomfortable, okay? And when yes, Jono, you have opinions, go.
All of this assumes that the web as we have it is beautiful and perfect and far better, which is demonstrably false, right? We collectively have filled it with rubbish, and it is not good. And it is full of low quality, largely duplicate, largely undifferentiated keyword filler. And I think we don't have a plan for how to improve that, right? It is getting demonstrably worse every time. We've been handed the keys to the tools to make it worse at an order of magnitude. I think the only solution we have for that is AI/LLM-esque summation layers. Otherwise, we've just got to wade through the world's worst cesspit.
See, this is something that I come back to a while, and there's a couple of themes that come out of a lot of people talking in the industry of Google should be grateful for SEOs, and I don't disagree with that as a point of ideology, because I think a lot of some SEOs do really good work and want to do it for the right reasons. Like, speaking for myself, I want to make websites better and add value to the internet. I fell into SEO writing content for spun directories that I didn't realize. I didn't even know what that was when I did it. And there's a degree of, like, the rest of my career has been apologizing since. But I look to echo Johnny's point, the internet is massive, like really massive. And the general quality is terrible. Like, the vast majority of the web is a mess. And I think a small amount of well-meaning SEOs ensuring that canonicalization and sitemaps are correct is good and all, but I think it's insignificant in the grand scheme of things, to just be frank. Like, I'm not, and this isn't me hating on SEOs, it's not me kind of punching downwards, it's just the fact. It may help. I mean, a lot of the best websites that get returned most in Google tend to be better quality, arguably, I'd say, but I'm still, personally, I don't buy. We are janitors of the internet, and that kind of sucks, and I'm fed up with it. But do I think that Google should be grateful of that? Does it make their lives meaningfully more easier? I don't know if I buy that.
I think up to a point. I mean, if we've had those gnarly captchas that we had to go, yes, this is a boat, yes, this is a bicycle. I mean, they've relied on folks doing that job, being
I'm not sure
janitors.
that's what SEO's meant, though. I think happy accident, maybe.
But that's not just SEOs that have checked the capture. It's just the general. I mean, that's just general data labeling, isn't it? Over the years by everybody, general
Yep.
humans.
But it feels like they feel entitled to people doing this for them.
Yeah.
Oh, is it show your sausage time? Dawn, is your Pomeranian nearby?
We're trying to keep this family friendly, Myriam. Jesus.
That's why we bring the pets. Oh, sorry. Oh, your wiener.
It's okay.
There we go.
Okay, but
Your American is showing, Myriam.
So ultimately, do we expect any transparency from Google then? As like senior folks in this space, do you all expect proper data? Because I don't.
Well, at least we are going to get some data, and thankfully, the hoo-ha the other day with the no referrer thing, which was very alarming, really alarming actually, and thankfully was a bug. I think we'll get more data as we go along, and that will be good to see. I don't know how easy it is for them to break things out, because one of the issues with large language models is that it's not that easy for them to actually necessarily identify the sources of citations and content and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, I think things will improve. I think that there is an arrogance that's far bigger than the likes of John and Gary and Martin, because they're lovely, but they are just our small window into the world of Google. And I think there is an arrogance generally, and they try and keep us happy and throw us a bone occasionally. Yeah. As SEOs.
Yeah, I think in terms of the data and what we do and we don't get, I mean, the data we receive is always imperfect. And like, even from from when not provided started creeping into analytics through to all of the inconsistencies, like the closer you get to GSC or those kind of things, I think it's always been kind of rubbish. But I think it's been good enough directionally to, in theory, help people make the right decisions. And I know the data that comes out of Search Console they are trying to guide us in the right way. Like average rankings is there intentionally, not just your ranking. I mean, that metric is imperfect and hard to work with, but they have been very clearly saying this is how you need to use this data. But then it gets undercut by things like, but the AIO module is block 1, wherever you are in that. And so the data is getting less useful. Now, some of that will get cleared up because they're making it up as they go along. They're literally vibing it. And I think there's as much said that. Do they owe us any more than that? Or do I expect they'll give us any better than that? I think right now, I don't know, this is tinfoil hat time. I think a lot of what they're saying AIOs are doing and what it's actually doing, I think if we had Search Console access or better Search Console access or data broken out, I'm not saying it's necessarily a lie, but I think Mark even spoke about this on the last Candour podcast. Is like the wording of some of these investor calls has been very, very careful, and a lot of this stuff is in the headlines. It won't take much of us long to start loudly saying, this doesn't add up, guys. We're being paddled a load of rubbish. Whether that's true or not, it literally doesn't matter. There's been certain snafus that have made it to top level press that have spooked investors over the last couple of years. And it's purely we don't need this shit right now is generally where I think they are. I'm not defending them. I'm not an apologist for Google. If I was a product manager for that right now, I don't want C-level coming down at me because I've given the community, the noisy, unruly community, access to data that's going to make their life difficult. I'm just not doing it.
Yeah.
The noisy, unruly community that actually helps them improve their product. We do help them. We our SEOs probably contribute more to helping them improve their search product with all the screaming that we do about, hey, this doesn't work. The fact that you can't tell what year it is and so forth. So, we're the equivalent of the PlayStation community that helped them to improve their product. So we're it for the web. Yeah.
I'm excited because you said tinfoil hat. So I have a few things to say very quickly. I think Perplexity is letting their platform be gamed this easily just to attract marketers early on. That's my tinfoil hat theory regarding this. And the second one that I have is when ChatGPT became very approving of everything everyone was doing, I think that was an attempt a la Facebook to make the product more sticky while causing some humans to have delusions and causing a few divorces. But that's not here nor there.
Yeah, the Google I/O example where they were using the live search thing and was like, oh, I love this convertible. Actually, that's a garbage truck. See, Gemini is happy to tell you when you're wrong. It's like, yeah, we get it. Counterbalancing the correctness of all that and apologetic kind of agreement of all of the ChatGPT stuff. I think there's some really interesting quotes from Sundar Pichai did a great interview with the guys over at The Verge on Decoder a little while ago. And the quote from Google I/O as well, AIO views are driving over 10% increase in uses of Google for the types of queries that show AIO views. I was like, well, yeah, we can't turn that off. So
he's having a YouTube moment donating the album.
It's said earlier, it's so carefully worded that it's not clicks have increased by 10%. It is increase of usage in specific queries that trigger those things. And yeah, but you control how many queries trigger that thing. So you could just make it 500%. And sorry, go on, John.
No, go.
The other one I picked out from the interview with Nilay over at The Verge was, more than any other company, we prioritize sending traffic to the web. No one sends traffic to the web in the way that we do. It's yeah, you haven't had competition for 20 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, that's probably true just because,
by default, right? Of course you do. And prioritize sending traffic to the web, does that include also you guys? He doesn't specify, Sundar Pichai very clearly does not say we are sending it to publishers and websites. He uses the broader concept of the web, and Google is part of the web, whether they consider themselves that internally or not. And I think we've obviously seen plenty of examples of AIO views and AI mode linking back to search pages, and they even tried to do the on-page and
I was going to say, I think that might be part of grounding, though. The actual internal, we all do internal link to reinforce concepts and so forth in our own websites. Whilst it doesn't look great from sending traffic outside of the walled garden, I think that may be part of the grounding, because when you look at the actual links that they do that on, it's concepts, and where you're going to send somebody on, probably Wikipedia is losing out, because a lot of the time you'd send those kind of those links would go to other sites that say definitions almost. So I think it may be part of grounding. Sorry, I interrupted there, Jack. Yeah. We need a little hand up, don't we?
No, not at all. I think you're totally right when it comes to the grounding side of things. I think Google is trying to, almost coming back to the publishing side of things, try and reinforce themselves as a trustworthy source as well.
Because if brands,
Reinforcing,
you don't have fidelity, you don't get money. Point.
exactly
Done.
right. Yeah. And I think when it comes to the way they're wording a lot of the data and stuff, it's like, oh, people are loving it. It's now used by 1.5 billion people. Again, we don't have a choice. This is going to be the future of search. I'm not sure if we all agree, and I guess I'll ask the question. Do we think AI mode is essentially the future of Google search? Will the traditional 10 blue link kind of thing essentially be gone by the end of this year or next year? Probably sooner rather than later, I guess, is my opinion. But I've seen a lot of people say, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think it will be totally and utterly query dependent. I was revisiting a paper actually this morning. I'm doing my master's around AI overviews. My thesis for this master's around AI overviews and the impacts on Gen Z and Millennials in making life choices. And one of the papers I'm reading over and over is Rethinking Search, which is the one where they're basically saying, this is by Google. They're basically saying, this is how we're rethinking search with AI at the core of it. It's massive, actually. But one of the things they say is that navigational and commercial queries should go directly to websites, and that's fine. We don't want to change that. And that's sprung out at me, yeah? So this is mostly around questions, research, all the informational stuff, which we've used as bread and butter to drive traffic in the higher parts of the funnel. So I think it will be query dependent going forward. I don't think it will take over the whole of search.
It's worth considering that organizationally, they are now irrevocably committed to this narrative. Right? If 6 months from now they go, oh, actually, this was a bad idea, everybody gets fired and the stock market collapses. So they cannot back down on this, which means even the reality, who knows, but the narrative and the marketing and all the storytelling on this will continue to reinforce this idea that AI mode is great, that everybody's using this, that everyone loves it, and that will almost certainly manifest as a continued slew of kind of thin feature layers on top of all of this that they can shout about and can keep the stock market happy. So who knows what they're actually going to do underneath all of that, but we are going to be bogged down in another year of like itty bitty, oh, and now we've added this thing and everybody loves it and it's great and we won't ever get to the truth. And I think that gap widens, which is super interesting. The story they're going to tell us is going to deviate further and further from what's actually going on.
Yeah.
I think the other part of this is, if you look at Google's general approach to product development, I know we kind of speak broadly and we're kind of going over 10 years or so, but the kernel of the idea may stay, but the form, how it's packaged, will almost inevitably not be what we're looking at right now. I still think back to Google Wave, like when you're kind of the first kind of canvas, like cooperatively editing it at the same time, which eventually became like Drive and documents and docs and bits like that. I'm not saying it's necessarily the same, but I think the form of AI mode right now, I don't think that's going to stick with us in the exact form, but I 100% agree that the parts of it are going to continue running in. I think they are moving to rebuild so much of search like this. I think how you can synthesize data, the way that friction can be removed, the way that you can kind of better preempt user requirements and that kind of thing. I think we will keep seeing it. I worry the most. I feel the people that are most going to get rocked by this are tool providers who are right now building very aggressively to capitalize on this. There's one job that's going to be so stressful the next year. It's that person that has to watch that SERP and has to keep track of like all of these SERP elements and make sure that you're scraping and collecting the right data and processing it. And because that's going to change so often. Someone said to me the other day, do we need to keep a folder of all of our screenshots of like AI overview results and bits like that? It's like, you can, but it's a bit like keeping pictures of the kids. It's like they won't be like that in 2 weeks time, 6 weeks, 8 months. Like, it's changing so fast, it kind of doesn't matter. And everyone right now is saying, what tool do we need? What's the killer app? I don't know. And I don't think they know. Everyone's saying it to them. But when you actually look at what's being given back, it only takes a couple of very small changes in how this all works to just, you need to switch to a different tool. I work more in the enterprise space. Onboarding and standing up these tools and training them into an entire organization takes a load of time. And to be frank, we are not ready to start doing that yet. We're better saying, well, what's going to be the constant? Google Search Console, the data is not great, but at least we know that if nothing else, we need to keep an eye on impressions over the next couple of months, which feels both liberating and scary in his equal measure. But the original question, yes, AI mode will still be here, just in different clothing. It'll probably cosplay something else before long.
I'm obsessed with something that is tangential to this. I will sometimes go and dump all of these ideas on Chris and Jono, but like, I was at the store today. I took a picture of a product because I don't speak Dutch. And even if I wanted to expand some imagination and guess what the ingredients are, I'm not able to. My personal database cannot do that. So I took a photo and it couldn't translate it because it was not visible enough, because the contrast was not good enough on the product packaging. Who's going to be in charge of telling folks, hey, you need to actually consider this? Because once again, the ways people are searching for information are changing. They're multimodal. So who thinks about this? Who's the steward of ensuring that this happens?
I love that.
Real life
That's
web
so SEO,
accessibility,
right?
right?
How many SEOs have ever even considered that they ought to have an opinion on packaging? But why is that any different to the meta description of the SERP? Why is it any different to the inherent quality of the product? This is our remit, and that's dysfunctional in many ways. But you're right, nobody other than us.
I was going to say, coming to an audit near you.
It's going to be an awful checklist. Screaming frog.
But honestly, I'm going to be quite frank. This is what my clients pay me for. That type of like out of the box, but this feels like someone's job. And since nobody else seems to think about it, let me pipe up.
I feel like you were multimodality, like personified, Myriam. Just like there's always some other different way of thinking about it.
That's our job description, which is multimodal.
Pretty much.
Actually, yeah, but I wouldn't, and this is where I have been sounding super negative and angry, which I think is a very good French trope. I'm about to go on strike here. But realistically speaking, though, I'm genuinely excited. My brain is wondering, like, where is this going? I'm a bit upset that, you know, billionaires are trying to muddy up the waters, but I'm also asking myself something else. So Google has made deals with publishers, right? They were forced legally. Some things happened. They're pretending it's going great. So fantastic for them. And we know that Reddit made so many millions just pandering to everyone. And so now I made an Excel spreadsheet of everyone who made a deal, the publishers, the news sources, video, image banks. And I'm wondering, is this where we start making recommendations instead of saying, hey, get more backlinks? It's like, hey, get them in the right spots because they already paid for it. I'm not saying that this is the way it should go. I'm just saying it comes through my mind.
I'm saying that's not the way it should go. So it's like, definitely not. It's like,
I agree, but will it happen?
I've heard for 10 years ago, I heard that get more links, rank higher. It's like, for me, that is that partly that is the challenge at the minute. The SEO world has not moved on. I'm not saying you, Myriam, because I'm sure you have, but I mean, this is part of the challenge. The SEO world finds something that works, gets a lemon, wants to squeeze it forever. Especially, you know,
this is why we can't have nice things. This is why
exactly, yeah. Well, actually, you are right though about there will be a lot of spamming that will go on. I was looking at something the other day with this whole this differentiable search index, which becomes this one model paradigm shift in generative AI generally, which seems that whole industry is trying to move towards. I read in a paper that what they're trying to do is have it so that actually they recognize queries from the URLs, the words in the URL. And I thought, oh my God, please don't do that, because if they do, that is just going to there looks to be like so many opportunities where SEOs could just spam all this to death once they get going with it. And so there's naivety on their side. And yeah, people will go mad.
I think the naivety is an interesting discussion as well, because it seems like from the CEO side of things, and also very much from like a legislative point of view as well, nobody knows how that shit works. Like basically nobody is studying it like you are, Dawn, that actually is making these decisions and pressing the buttons that actually makes everything go. And there's always the terrifying interviews with insert tech CEO here and insert US congressman here. And they're like, so how does the internet work? You're like, gee, it's been around for 30 years, mate. Where have you been? Like, you're going to take 40 minutes to get to talk about LLMs if you start with how does the internet work. And I find that stuff so kind of terrifying. And I appreciate the European Commission in a lot of ways and the ICO that are trying to like push a lot of the kind of privacy stuff and data regulations and things like that. And it seems like a lot of the US government, British government, a lot of European governments want to have opinions on this stuff. We here in Britain had Keir Starmer saying how great AI was the other day. And then we had the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, using the word A1 because she was reading AI incorrectly because a capital I looks like a 1. If you can't say 2 letters of the thing, I don't trust you to make decisions about the education of the future of the children based on AI and LLMs. That's terrifying.
When are we launching a company called A1 that does vaguely
I know,
AI
right?
things? But
We're with the 5 founders right now. This is happening.
I want to give one example that I'm that just popped into my head due to different conversations. But if you want to buy a house in Denmark, and let's say that you upload all of this information and you refine like all the PDFs that you need for the potential houses, it will still go online, get some information, and tell you that you have water in your basement and asbestos in your house, because 98% of the houses have been evaluated to have asbestos, and like I don't know how many have, basement water issues. So imagine if we go, does this rock star have a sex scandal? Ta ta ta. So we're going to end up with situations where it's kind of like, I really wonder the type of content not SEOs, but folks out there are going to deem good to produce just for a click. Are we going to be able to wean ourselves off of these like proxy metrics that aim to showcase quality? Like what is quality? Oh, Dawn, go ahead. I see your face. I want to hear it.
No. I didn't have anything to say. I was just intrigued by the conversation. That was
Can
all.
I mean,
Yes.
you've struck the touch paper for me on quality. I think I think the SEO industry, we're good at very many things. If I'm being 100% honest, I think judging the true quality of a piece of content is not one of our finest strengths. I'm being as gentle as I can, but I think it was 2-3 years ago we had one of the big core updates. We had a lot of content publishers get absolutely smashed.
September 2023 helpful content.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And we had we effectively had a lot of people saying, but we've been doing great content. We hired an actual subject expert to write content. It's like, so what? Like that doesn't intrinsically, that is not enough. Like we kind of did an enhanced version of 500 words and at least 3 external references to keep it panda safe, except now it became EEAT safe. So it had a named expert and a bio that said what their qualification might have been. And it's like, and not everyone was doing that again, but that was the scaled industrialized part of that process. But the problem
Universities
is
do that. Teachers tell you you should do this many pages and this much, and we all know it's not successful. So I know that we can do better than this. What do you think, Chris?
well, I mean, everyone needs a guide or a checklist, right? Like that's whether you think it's good or not. I think fundamentally people rely on that. Like even if you're super talented, some days you might have an off day and you need some guardrails. The fundamental thing that people don't often have is what the actual end result needs to be successful. So a good piece of content is not a two-dimensional object. There are many different things that can make a piece of content good, which is super highly dependent on context. Sometimes a great piece of content is a zero-click search result that has just that single piece of information that you're looking for. Sometimes it's a 1,200-word essay. But it's often really hard to know what that is, because when you're searching for it, you don't always know. I think as an industry, we have got to a point where we know exactly what that is, and we've scaled it in the best way possible. And when that particular update came out, we're kind of like, well, we've been doing the right thing. We're now really, we now feel a bit like sad and mopey because it's not working. And it's like, well, but it wasn't, it might have been working, but it wasn't actually what we were trying to do. And I think we're in that moment again, I feel.
You know, in the helpful content update, one thing I spotted, and I see this a lot on a lot of these blogs, is that they write to a like, well, we do X amount of blog posts a week and all this carry on, and eventually they end up repeating things that they've already got candidate pages to rank for. You know, they run out of ideas. They just end up like regurgitating the same stuff over and over and over again. And that's not quality. The worst thing that I think anybody can ever do in search is compete with themselves, because literally you just damage your rankings the minute you start like producing things that meet the same intent in multiple places. But also, I think people don't spend enough time actually exploring the SERPs, thinking about the information need. They'll produce content that actually does not fit with that intent, and then intent shifts. All of a sudden, the page that they had number 1 suddenly goes to page 3 because search is changing. You know, we know the example of I always give the example of the sport query, Liverpool, Manchester, twice a year. It goes from being a travel query to a sport query because of the derbies. So stuff like that. I think we're just too reliant on tracking keywords with tools and not understanding what quality means at a given time to a particular searcher. So
I'm gonna go a bit further with this. When it comes to quality, I remember when you wanted to be entertained back in the day, way before any of us were born, you would go pay for theater because there was no TV, there was nothing else, right? And that information is gate kept because you have to pay for the experience. It's physical, it's somewhere, okay? And then we had to pay for our CDs, right? And now we have this model where we are thinking that if information should be free because we're gonna have question mark profit at the end. And now for brands, what I would say is produce your best content, give it to your fans, give it on your own platforms, make it into a walled garden, refine it, extract most of the value from it, test it, and then if you see a benefit, let it out there and feed the beast then. And this would create a situation where that paradigm of let's do content marketing because it works, it would become more closed in. And you know, generative search would have basically either very successful flooding, so we know that this content will work, we curated it, it is vetted, etc., we feed it because we can see the benefit of doing so, or it will just be kind of a sloppy mess of people just trying to recreate something. And in that case, it may work well, but it will cost a lot of money to eliminate the slop and make sure these insights go forth. So I'm pondering, okay, quality content takes time and takes expertise. Okay, we move that curve, that bell curve. Now it's kind of like towards mediocre content. Crap content, truly crappy content online is no longer defined the same way. But ultimately then, if I don't see the benefit of being a data philanthropist, of sharing my information, if there's no payoff, then there's a huge risk of that type of searching kind of not withering, but having a baseline that is so low that either people downgrade their expectations and still keep working with it because it's still better, or people just going, you know what, the group chat is going to be way better, I'm going to ask. And then if you go in a group chat to ask something, doesn't that sound like a very unstructured forum of your, like, it feels like some stuff is, we're going to go back to doing what we used to do before we had all of these options. That's what I'm afraid of.
So the death of the open web, and we're all going to sneak off back into our MSN chat rooms that we did in the early 2000s. Great.
I see you.
Dreamy.
I see you.
I was going to say, but then what will happen is effectively that place where that chat, you know, that chat or that forum or whatever, or that place where people actually do start to enjoy the conversation or the content, that will begin to then get navigational traffic. And I think that actually quality is in the eye of the beholder. Quality, we can extend Firthian linguistic thinking to, instead of being you shall know a word by the company it keeps, you shall know quality by the company it keeps as well.
Yes.
So I think, good quality together has a massive halo impact. But also I think, as you say, we're creating quality to get clicks from search, but really we should be creating quality for traffic that we expect to arrive and want to browse and browse and browse and browse and continue to stay on there, and then we become money. So I think that should be our overall objective with everything, really. Information wise, make it so people are delighted to get there and they want to stay, basically.
Yeah, that I feel like we were quite lazy with the word quality as an industry. Right, we used to say unique content, which just meant slightly more words organized in a different order. And then we started saying quality because Google told us that that was the right word. And I don't think anybody ever really did that kind of hard introspection to say, what does this actually mean? I still think we're going, let's do some keyword research. Let's summarize some summaries that other people have already summarized in a slightly different order with slightly more words. I think it's still incredibly rare for people to say, how do I create new value? And I think that's going to be super important in those kind of closed gardens and walled gardens. Why would people make the effort to come and engage here in this small locked ecosystem? That's how you, and like the most successful D2C brands we see today are already doing this. This is a model that works. It's definitely the future.
I have a question, Jack. Are we allowed to swear? Because the non-sweary version of what I'm about to say sounds even worse.
I can put funny sound effects. Will be fine. Absolutely.
Okay, we have a term in French that is called l'enculage de mouche. I will let you guess what you're gonna blur out here, but in English it is butt fucking flies. And producing content marketing really felt like an exercise in trying to make love to a fly's behind. I told you it would sound worse because it's like I'm doing
Duolingo. I said I'm not saying that on my Duolingo, and I'm on a 1,200 days. I'm on a 900 days.
I
when that does come up, you'll be like, got it.
I will send it to you, but it really felt like, oh, I'm doing marginally better than my competition. And I'm thinking to myself, none of us wake up in the morning going, let me get the slightly more mediocre version of whatever solution I need in my life. And if we get back to this notion, I try to help brands navigate it at a bigger picture, because I have people reaching out to me going, okay, how am I positioning myself? Like, tell me what to do. Where's the SEO checklist for this? And I tell them, no, you need to consider your brand as not necessarily something you own fully now, because it's narrated by AI now. And AI, when we talk about it, more specifically like generative search, will surface things that a brand doesn't necessarily predict will get surfaced, because there's trend affinities, right? There's poor Wendy's, like they've been good sports, because sir, this is a Wendy's to me nobody cares is a rather drastic like brand interpretation by the public. So you have the brand you put out there that is machine and human readable. Like if you're Heineken in Greece, people know you as the green one because of your bottle. Okay, like these are things that humans do. Then you need to pay attention to what humans are saying about you, whether it be through like tastemakers, publications, social media platforms, etc. But then there's also the stuff now where before you could hire a PR team like Johnny Depp would and say, let's make this disappear. But now that stuff that you're burying in page 34 of that annual report, it will get surfaced, depending if JavaScript is involved or not, but that's not a question. But so now you have to keep monitoring also if you're founder led, like it's not just your Wikipedia page, it's your founder's Wikipedia page, and you need to contextualize in which way like your brand was founded. And these are all elements of a brand. You have the known brand, you have the latent brand, you have the shadow brand that kind of haunts you, or the stuff you want to feed discreetly. And then it all like comes together in an AI narrated brand. And we have people going, I don't like that, change that. And you're like, no, actually, let me explain. Your brand is kind of a disco ball, different facets, and you don't control all of them because you exist within a social fabric. And I know, Jono, I'm bringing it back to, we kind of have a social contract with brands too, because we trust them, and we trust them for reasons. They're familiar to us, and they help us reduce the cognitive load. If I'm going to make a choice in a supermarket to trust a brand that I've trusted for years, they can like they can massively mess up and cut corners up to a certain point. They can get away with a lot more crap
until it's too late, and then you change.
and that's severed. And then I have people going, okay, how much corner cutting can I get away with? I'm like, that's not the right question.
But it is the question that gets asked, right? Like we were talking about the dysfunction of SEOs and Google, etc. But so much of this is the inherent laziness, for want of a better word, of business, where all of these decisions and conversations start with what's the least I can do to meet the minimum viable success, not how do I pursue quality. Nobody's asking that question for obvious reasons. That's not how businesses work. But that's now MVP, right? If you want what the system says about your brand to be a reflection of what's encoded in societal perception, and that to be good and not awful, you need to have done the good work and earned the respect up front. But businesses do not function this way, at least not existing legacy businesses. It's such a huge paradigm shift. Yeah, they're going to lose out. It's quite incredible.
I think there are some great brands though that do invest in. They are investing in their reputation, and they believe that they do have a social contract. And what I would say is this: I see a lot of people say, "Hey, why can't this mom and pops? Why can this mom and pop site not rank first over this massive brand?" I'm sorry, but if I had a choice between going to get a Primark dress and something from somewhere with better reputation, not that I don't have anything against Primark dresses, but all I'm saying is if I'm going to something very, very special, I'm gonna go and buy something that is very special from a really great brand. Yeah. So I don't understand why people would not expect the web, generally speaking, to have some kind of bias towards trusted brands, because that is where the majority of people put their trust in the first place. So why should the web not be a reflection? And in particular, why should SEO turn it on its head so it's the web generally and rankings and traffic and so forth, and not a reflection of the real world high street, for instance? It's always been a silly thing to me that people go, oh well, there's bias in the world, you know, the Pareto principles and Zipf's law, they all exist everywhere. So anyway, I'll hand over because I can see there's itching going on now at this.
Yes, some brands do it super, super well. When you were saying, hey, some brands actually like do invest. Yes, there's some brands that were around before electricity became a thing in Parisian houses, okay? Like, and they're still famous today. And they're actually training AI to figure out a dupe from the real product that they make. And they're getting with blockchain and NFTs to actually like showcase that this is a real product. And they're not doing this just to game the system. They're doing this because that is what their brand is about. That's how they show that luxury is not just the high sticker price. There's also craftsmanship. And okay, so to go back to this, these companies, they know, and the mom and pop store, they also know, because I was in a webinar trying to explain entities to people who don't care about them. And I was like, okay, think about it. What are the best French pastries on this side of that gigantic St. Lawrence River in Quebec? And there was someone in the room that answered me and was like, actually, I know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about this pastry shop. And I was like, yes, I am. And they're that famous in that entire province. So the thing is, if you differentiate your brand and you actually do this properly, you become a semantic reference point. You do it right, and it's reflected in behaviors. You do it right, and it's reflected in how you're perceived and what you get from it. And this is, I think, going to be the crux of the matter. It's not the content that you produce and how good it is. It is understanding, okay, our customers are focused on price, if they can fit their kids in that car, if it charges up fast, if, you know, like, you know what I mean? If the maintenance is okay. And then like maybe a fifth thing, the color. Okay, so you have 5 points. Let's measure your competitors against this so you truly understand. If you're competing on the same space, if you're not the cheapest for someone looking for the absolute cheapest, you're not the brand. You're not going to be surfaced at the top. Like, that's just a thing. So instead of blindly saying, okay, we want to do better than the competition, even marginally better, understand why people are making the choice to go with you or not, instead of trying to force them. The end. because there's this notion that we're all like madmen 2.0, that we can sell anything, that we can convince anyone of anything. No, we're in a full-blown age of propaganda. What is it, 2.0, 3.0 at this point in terms of tech? And human behaviors, yes, we fall for it up to a certain point. And when we don't fall for it anymore, then you either have to start a brand new brand or you're gonna die.
I'm going to wrap things up with one last question, and it kind of ties around to Google as a brand, I guess. And I think the evolution we're going to see over the next, maybe by the end of this year, we'll see AI mode and all that kind of stuff launch around the rest of the world. Is that going to be something that might break people's trust in Google? This is the kind of conversation I'm having with my parents who can barely order things on Amazon, or my wife who is a nurse who doesn't really use the internet apart from social media and browsing and stuff, and suddenly had to have the conversation of, why does my SERP look like that? What is this? Obviously, she didn't use the word SERP. Was like, why does my search look like this? How come this is changing? What is a AI overview? What the hell is this? And I think a lot of people have no idea this is happening, and will just suddenly open up their phone or their laptop or their work computer or whatever it is one day, and suddenly Google is completely different, and they don't know how to change it or turn it off, or if they even have that option anymore. So I guess I'll pitch the last question to you guys of like, do you think this could be the thing that chips away the trust that we have had in Google? Like Myriam used an example there of like, oh, you get services of Wendy's is the negative side of things, but we've been using Google as a verb. They're such a synonymous brand. It became the concept of searching was their brand, right? You get the Kleenex, you get the Hoovers, all that kind of stuff that just become synonymous with their space. Could this be
It's
the thing that
less and
chips away
less.
Google? And yeah, exactly.
It's
Right?
less and less. Google as a verb is like going down in usage based on some things I've seen. However, have I looked at the sample size yet? No, but you can tell that you hear it less and less. I mean, I'm a trainer. I talk to folks that are older than me, younger than me, and it's not as prevalent in my day-to-day, I would say.
I think, Jack, I'm going to overlap with probably what Dawn's about to say, because I know this is the masters, but my kids like AI answers because they generally answer the question, or they think they answer the question. They might be ignorant of whether it's right or not, but we'll ignore that for the moment. Yet my eldest is quite against generative AI from a creative point of view. My household generally is, in terms of like, if it's morally right, like energy consumption, bits and pieces like that. I think for some people that have very polarized views on AI, I think for them it might. For everyone else, particularly if you're under 30, I don't think it will. I frankly think it will change. I think it's so pervasive and so powerful, and fundamentally it has the potential to be better, and I think will be. Mistakes and issues currently notwithstanding. So I don't think Google are super worried, frankly. And also, I'm looking in analytics. I don't think they're that afraid of ChatGPT right now. They've got better funding as well. So
I think they are changing. Google are changing the whole of the search industry by force at the moment. And what's happening, for instance, is from what I've seen, they're calling it 2023 was the dawn of generative information retrieval. So we have all this slight aside, we have all these debates about, is it GEO, is it SEO, is it AEO, and all that. Well, the IR field have thought it's big enough to separate it out into a field of information retrieval. So I would say going forward, probably we'll have people who, to some extent, will specialize in trying to help people appear in generative areas. But to just go back, I think Google, I think they will end up having a smaller share of market over time, just in search. But what will search represent? Search will probably represent all these different verticals of behaviors, whether it be voice, whether it be lens, whatever it may be, whether it be using chatbots, whether it be using agents and so forth. I think there will be a fragmentation of search behaviors across the whole search journey. And I think perhaps Google will still have a big, massive share of that, but so will some of these other huge companies. For instance, I think it was only yesterday or the day before that Claude have announced now that you can search the web through Claude, for instance. Obviously, Bing are there, but Bing are powering a lot of these things in the first place, so they are under the underground, but they also have a large share. I think they may come through and surprise us because they've got a lot of big partnerships going on. So yeah, Things are going to change for sure.
Myriam made a really good point earlier about how an entrenched brand remains entrenched until it makes really kind of egregious mistakes, right? There's so much friction in consciously choosing to change your preferred provider for a given thing. And yeah, maybe I change which packet of crisps I buy, but changing fundamentally how I search, hugely disruptive to do it consciously. But yeah, for sure, we're seeing changes in behavior in Gen Z, etc. They're not using Google as much. I think the landscape has changed. So whether or not them bulling ahead on AI erodes their market share, I think it's probably small compared to the broader changes in behavior that are happening. I have a wonderful example of this. We got a dog nearly 2 years ago, and we have spent, I suspect, she's not listening, thousands of pounds on artisanal food, on clothing, on activity stuff, etc. Sam has found influencers and groups and brands, direct to consumer brands on TikTok, and has evaluated them, recognized them, built trust with them over time, and then spent, and even searched for solutions, has never once Googled any of this, right? So, and this is not isolated behavior, but entire research, brand discovery, affinity building, subscription behaviors have occurred through search in an entirely different ecosystem. I think that is only going to increase. And not just in direct consumer places, but and it will tie together with the whole thoughts on the building of closed garden communities, all of these bits. I think there will be more competition to Google, even if they don't shit the bed and mess up particularly. The space is fragmenting.
I'm actually a bit creeped out, but also curious of the wearables that a few brands are trying to shove down our throats now, because it's like, okay, I kind of want you to give me the option to personalize, have me be curious, etc. But if you're going to start selling me heart monitors because you can tell that I'm stressed out, like that was rude. That's not the moment. That's not the context. That's just shining a light on how intrusive you are. So let's see if it actually goes well and then people want to truly change some massive search behaviors and personalization behaviors, or if it does another Google Glass. Let's see.
And what you just said there, Miriam, almost sounded like the first episode of the latest season of Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys have seen that, where get the brain data transfer thing to save a person's life. But if you don't upgrade and you don't keep upgrading, you start saying ads out loud in real life to kids, working in a school, and you lose your job and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, personalization, we could spend another 3 hours talking about the whole personalization of SERPs coming up as well. But I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to say a huge thank you to all four of you for joining me. It's been really, really fun. I feel like I'm like bursting with ideas and thoughts and want to go off and have all other conversations now. So I really, really appreciate you guys joining me. And I will put links to follow everybody here, their websites, their LinkedIn profiles, all that kind of stuff down in the show notes down below. Jono, Dawn, Myriam, thank you. Chris, happy birthday and thank you very much. And yeah.
Thank you.
Joyeux
Thank you.
anniversaire.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
And that wraps up this week's episode. I hope you really enjoyed the amazing conversation between Dawn, Jono, Myriam, and Chris and I. And go and follow those guys. They're all doing amazing work. They're doing brilliant research and studies and articles and talks and all this kind of stuff. I've been following all four of them for a very long time, and it was really lovely to finally sit down with all four of them. I know Myriam and Chris have been on the show before. I know Dawn had been on the show before. That was my first ever conversation with Dawn and my first proper conversation with Jono. And yeah, I feel like there is so much to talk about. I was genuinely thinking about making this a regular feature on the show, where we get kind of a monthly panel of people to discuss topical stuff. So if this is a format you like, please do let me know. Genuinely, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. It felt different to a lot of the interviews and the one-to-one kind of conversations. And if you enjoy this kind of content, give it a subscribe, give me a like, give me a rating, all that kind of stuff, and let me know your feedback down below if you want to see more conversations like this with more brilliant people across SEO and search marketing. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and listening, especially watching and listening right until the end. You're the real ones. I appreciate you. Appreciate you the most. And like I said, I will see you next week. I'll be back to normal with plenty of fantastic guests and fantastic interviews, interesting topics, and of course, Mark and I recapping all the latest SEO news towards the end of the month as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.